At my funeral, everyone wear bright colors. Bury me in a bright pink dress. Please, don't play any of that hallelujah bullshit. Have a celebration of life. Have the biggest party you can possibly plan. Don't let my parents spend a ton of money on my headstone. I want a simple one with my name on it, and then throw a knock-knock joke on it or something. And if you can make it pink, please do.
Hey Brooke, how are you?
Good.
My name is Brooke Sturgis. I grew up with my two sisters in a little suburb in Pittsburgh.
My big first grader, give me a big smile. Whoa, you look beautiful. Having 3 daughters is busy, lots of drama, lots of noise, lots of yelling, lots of clothes.
Brooke was always, made her presence known, whatever room she was in.
She was always the wild one of the family.
Oh, look at that pretty face.
She always made us laugh. She was like a little entertainer.
Growing up, we were constantly outside.
What's it called?
I've tried every single sport known to man. Basketball, volleyball, I played throughout high school. Soccer, tennis, lacrosse, you name it, I did it.
I've always admired her authenticity to herself. She's never felt like she had to conform to anything or anyone. She's always just been so genuinely herself.
She had a mind of her own, and she was certain about who she was.
I had these huge plans for my life that I wanted it all. I just dreamed of being big.
You could see in her face when she talked about SCAD that she just glowed.
She always wanted to do something along those lines of going to art school, and I think that was the best thing that she's ever done for herself, is kind of listen to her intuition to go and come to Savannah.
Savannah is not too big of a city, but it still gives you the city life feel. I was so excited to be at college. I was so excited. I wanted my parents gone, leave. I want to be on my own. I was so excited to be independent. Like, at that moment, I had the entire world in the palm of my hand. During freshman year, when we were hanging out, we were helping each other with homework. She was sneaking into my dorm, going to some fast food place with Mac at 3 a.m.
One of the first times I think the two of us had hung out alone, it was like October, and we went to a Halloween party together, just the two of us. And we were just like running through the hallway of the apartment, and I just remember we were laughing, and we were just having so much fun, and I was like, okay, I really like her. I think we're gonna be really good friends. I couldn't imagine wanting to live with anyone else. So me and 2 of our other friends and Brooke, we all signed a lease on a house, and yeah, we were gonna live together, the 4 of us.
I was so excited because I felt like I had my life on track. And I was about to move in to a house with some good people, and I was ecstatic. I felt like everything had kind of started to work out for me. I'd found my people, I'd found my major, and I was ready. I was like, okay, I can skip summer. Like, I'm ready to start this new school year. So right after I left my freshman year, on June 15th, I remember sitting with my 2 best friends, and we said, life feels too good right now. Everything just feels too right.
We kept saying, like, this is gonna be the best summer ever, we're gonna hang out all the time, and looking back, like, really jinxed ourselves there.
It was me, Brooke, and Ava, and I believe we were watching The Bachelorette.
We were hanging out as normal, nothing out of the ordinary.
I started to get really bad chest pain, and I left.
Brooke had made a couple comments saying that she had chest pain, and to be frank, we laughed it off.
Little did we know that was gonna be one of the last times we hung out, all three of us that summer.
Whenever I took a deep breath in, you could hear it, kind of like.
She woke us up and said, this is about 11:30 at night, and said, I'm not feeling well. I really feel like I'm having some challenges breathing.
It felt like 1,000 pounds sitting on my chest.
I got up the next morning around like 5:30 a.m. to go to the gym, and I noticed that she wasn't home. So I just assumed that she slept over at her friend's because that was not out of the norm. My mom comes upstairs and I said, oh, did Brooke sleep over at Ava or Katie's? And she was like, no, she woke up last night and didn't feel well when she got back. And so Dad took her to the ER, but they think it's just pneumonia.
I heard the doctor outside saying, this isn't pneumonia. I said to my dad, I feel like I can't breathe.
Her breathing worsened, and it continued to worsen hour by hour. She was on her knees and her hands to really get better air coming into her lungs. A pulmonary physician comes in, and he determined pretty quickly that something was not right.
This doctor comes in, said, Mr. Sturgis, I need you to come outside. And I saw about 15 people in white coats sprinting into my room. I've never seen doctors sprint like that. It was just these flashes of white coats saying, Brooke, you need to get on your back. Brooke, you need to get on your back.
I knew at that point that this was not a normal ER visit that we had had with the other kids or with Brooke in the past. This was feeling quite different at this point.
Like, I am screaming, and I hear my dad outside the door. Brooke, Brooke, that's my daughter, Brooke. Nothing will break your heart more than that. And they say, we need to put you under. I have pneumonia. Why am I going under right now? And so they go to put the anesthesia on me. I just took my hand, swung, and hit the anesthesia mask off my face and said, tell me what is going on. What was I going to do? No one was telling me what was going on. I just had people trying to control my body.
I was on a call in my room, and mid-call, I heard my mom just like almost bloody murder scream on the phone. I ran out and she couldn't even form words of what was happening. So I took the phone and my dad was on the other end. All that he had said was, I don't know what's going on. They just pulled me out of the room. 30 doctors just ran in. And there's a chance that she might not make it.
The last thing that I saw was this nurse. She was holding my hand. I will never forget that nurse's face. It was the last face that I saw. She knew. She knew what was happening to me. And it was 5 seconds before it went black. And I looked at her in the eye and I also knew. I knew I was dying. So I held on to that last 5 seconds as long as I could until it went black. A cold, a bad little chest sickness, you know? Never in a million years was I thinking that it was gonna lead to that.
I had about 14 missed calls from my mom. And I just, like, I knew something was wrong. And, you know, part of me didn't even want to call her back because I didn't want to know.
It's just one of those things that almost felt like we were like living in some sort of a movie or a show. You never think those things are gonna happen to you until they do.
Everything kind of like shut off for a minute. Like everything just like froze.
It's really confusing and weird to one day be, talking to someone that you love, and then the next you see posts and posts and posts, like asking for prayers for her.
I think all of us were just trying to wrap our heads around what was happening. Like, none of us really understood.
I want to say probably my biggest concern was that I didn't get to know her good enough, and that I may never get the chance to ever again.
That day, I didn't even know what to think or do.
There was a team of cardiologists that met with my wife and I right away. And they explained to us at that point that Brooke had gone into acute heart failure and that she also had gone into what is called cardiogenic shock. Your heart is not able to pump enough blood and oxygen to all of your organs. And all of your organs, as a result, begin to shut down. They felt it would be important to life flight her down to a different hospital in downtown Pittsburgh.
Whenever I woke up, I remember seeing my dad. And he's like, don't talk, don't panic, don't pull the tube out. And I remember the tears in his eyes. And he said, something happened to your heart. And they flew you in a helicopter here. And you are on some machines, and they're helping your heart work.
She was on the ventilator. They had to connect her to an ECMO machine, which is a device that essentially is doing the work of your heart and your lungs. They needed to connect her to another heart device, which was an Impella device, and that really is just a device that helps move blood.
Nothing in my head processed that those were life support machines.
They had moved her into a cardiac thoracic ICU. The area Brooke was in really is just surrounded by cement walls, and all the patients are divided by curtains. So there's a lot of beeping, a lot of noises, a lot of activity. When we first got down there, I'm thinking, she's down, she's gonna be here for a day or two, and then we're moving on. Like these machines are gonna help correct the issue, and then we're out of here. One of the physicians said to us, hey, make this homey for Brooke. Bring in pictures, bring in her blankets, hang things on the wall. And I'm thinking, how long are we gonna be here?
A few days after, they did extubate me. So they took the ventilator out, and I started to feel better. I was eating and walking, but I was still on the 2 other forms of life support. And they said, okay, here's the game plan. We're gonna keep you on these machines for a little bit. If your heart gets better, we will take you off these machines and you will walk out of here. If your heart doesn't get better, we have a plan B. Plan B is transplant. And I'm just sitting there like, what? No. There's no way we're getting to plan B. I feel better. I feel good. And he said, you feel good because this is not your heart working. These are the machines working.
They would look at her heart every other day, and we were, on pins and needles waiting for the results. And, every time they would get the report back, we could see the disappointment in their own eyes.
I remember they sat me up. They said, okay, we need to walk. And when I sat my head up, my head fell right to my chest. Someone else had to use their hands to hold my head up. I had gotten so weak from lying in a hospital bed that all my muscles just went away.
You got this, Brooke. You're strong. Keep breathing.
We'll help your muscles squeeze the blood back up to your brain.
Yep, keep breathing in through your nose.
I had no motivation.
You never think that you're gonna have to relearn how to walk. That's something I was doing last week. I was at the gym last week. My body, it was sick. So I was put on the transplant list as an emergency status. So a status 1, which means you need a heart and you need a heart now. Normally when you get listed for a heart, you're like 4 or 5, which like means you have time to wait. You are status 1. You don't have time.
It was hard for us to think through and imagine that our healthy 19-year-old athletic daughter is in need of a heart transplant.
I truly think that I had about 5 days left. You don't get a heart that fast, even if you're in emergency status. To get a heart that matched my age and my blood and then my antibodies, it wasn't gonna happen for me. It was not in the cards. So I was put back on the ventilator.
It was a little under a week that they finally were able to get clearance for Hannah and I to go in to visit her. The first time that we went, she had her breathing tube in, so she couldn't really talk to us. She was able to communicate through just writing on paper.
I think at that moment I knew when she was just laying there how sick she was, and within a day when they had, put her on a ventilator and intubated her, I knew at that point that it was bad and it was not gonna be okay for a long time.
It was just hard to kind of think back to days ago when I was sitting there having a conversation with her, planning what coffee shop we were gonna try next. Probably fighting over some shirt that she took of mine, to now her being in a bed, not able to talk.
For Alex and Hannah to see their sister be confronted with such a significant health challenge, it was difficult for them to really process. They put their lives essentially on hold in so many ways just to make sure that they were there.
I was so scared that she was going to give up. It wasn't the same Brooke I was looking at. It wasn't. And it just broke me because I could see in her eyes how scared she was. I kept looking at her. And that was the longest I've ever gone without speaking to my sister. I mean, she was there and she would write things, but I couldn't hear her voice.
I was writing on clipboards, signing, doing sign language to my mom. And I'd point to the tube, and then I'd hold out my clipboard and I said, "Take it out," in all caps, "Take it out." And they kept saying to me, "Brooke, if we take out this tube, you will stop breathing." I thought that those were gonna be my last few days. Hooked up to machines and unable to talk. And I remember the nurse rushing in. "Brooke, someone's on the phone for you." So she answers the phone and she puts it on speaker and she holds it next to my ear. And the lady from the Organ Donation Center said, "Brooke, we have a heart for you. Do you accept it?"
When they told us that, it was almost, like a sigh of relief.
It's an incredible gift that organ donor and that family had given Brooke and given us. So what we had to do now is just keep Brooke going for the next 20 hours.
I could tell she was most sick. She had fluid in her lungs and she had collapsed lungs, and they almost didn't do the surgery because of it.
So they had taken her off the ventilator to begin to get her prepared for the transplant, but she couldn't breathe a whole lot. I remember as we waited for those last 20 hours, Deb and I were with her the entire time, really helping her breathe, almost with every breath.
I remember telling my mom that I loved her, and I remember saying goodnight, and I remember making it a little bit more special than my other goodnights. Because I didn't think that I was gonna wake up. Not even from the transplant, I didn't think I was gonna wake up to get wheeled into the transplant. I was so sure that I was dead that night.
We went down to the hospital. They took her back around 8 a.m.
I remember them wheeling me in the hallway. I remember the bright fluorescent lights. And I remember my parents standing over me and just saying goodbye. And I remember me panicking because I didn't get to say goodbye to my friends.
It was storming. It was a thunderstorm almost the whole day. We sat in silence. It was so hard to, talk about anything. It was almost like we forgot where we were. I think they told us it was only gonna take like 6 hours. It ended up taking almost 12. I was optimistic for a while, and then I started to assume the worst. And I got mad at myself that I did, but it was kind of hard not to.
And then we got the call that we were able to go up. It felt like we sat there for an hour waiting for the doctor, but it was probably 5-10 minutes. And he came in and said that everything went great and that it couldn't have gone better. I think after we got that news, there was a little bit of weight lifted off of all of our shoulders.
We were just excited that she had made it through this lengthy day with so much that goes into doing a transplant, and now we're hearing that she's good.
I don't think anything was worse than those weeks that she had the tube in her throat and I couldn't talk to her at all.
They had to run this small wire up my nose with a little camera on the end. And they ran it up my nose and it went down to my throat into my vocal cords to see if my vocal cords got paralyzed. Because I couldn't speak. Because you lose all that muscle. It took a lot out of me to speak.
She's confined to the bed and she can't even eat. This was a long stretch where they had a feeding tube and she couldn't eat and they wouldn't let her drink. You're not really living life, I think getting by is the better way I could describe it. The challenge as a parent is there's not much you can do. Your child, our daughter's in the bed connected to these machines. What do?
I couldn't even reach across to grab my phone on the table next to me. I couldn't type. I couldn't do anything. Whenever I needed to go to the bathroom, I couldn't do it by myself. I needed like 5 people to help me. I didn't feel like a person anymore. I was attached to so many machines. Day in and day out, it was the same thing. It was the doctors. I felt like I was in a fishbowl. I would try to wave my arms and be like, tell me what's going on. Someone explain to me, when am I leaving? When am I getting better? What's the next step? And they all wanted to find out who the girl was who was 19 and went into heart failure. I wasn't a patient. No one wanted to sit and talk to me. People wanted to come and look. I was like an exhibit. That was so dehumanizing. And it wasn't all of them. There were some nurses that sat with me through the night. They sat and they held my hand and they were there and they saw me as a human.
In the midst of that, Brooke still had great humor. It was incredible to see her strength through all this. And I would say just fearless. She was stronger than anyone.
It took me a while to get to rehab. I got my transplant on June 30th, and I didn't get to rehab until the second week of August. I wanted it to be so fast. Like, I wanted to get to rehab in 3 days. I'd be running down the hall, skipping, if you will.
I couldn't imagine what she was going through. You know, it was like to almost learn how to rewalk again, how to sit up in a chair, how to swallow. I was like starting over completely. And I could tell mentally it was a really tough battle for her.
I had been in a hospital gown since June 15th. The first thing they did when I got to rehab was put me in real clothes. That was the first time that I cried happy tears in months. Feeling those clothes and not feeling a papery hospital gown, that's when I started to feel like a human again. I didn't realize that it was gonna be as special as it was. Woke up that next morning and I put on shoes for the first time. And the nurse came in and she said, "We're so happy you're here. Like, this is your first step of getting better." And I said, "In getting out." She said, "Oh, honey, we don't put a timer on when you guys get out. You know, we have to evaluate that." I said, "No, I'm giving you 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks. You have until next Friday." And I'm leaving. I was not strong, but mentally they said she needs to go home.
I could start to see myself back in Savannah. I could start to see myself healthy again. I could start to see myself traveling again.
We were so happy, and I know she was so happy to be home, but it was also scary for me, not having people have eyes on her all the time. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, she's not on these machines, and now it's up to me to make sure she's okay. I don't think I slept the first few nights, so I think it was bittersweet.
When she came out of the hospital, I knew it was still gonna be a bit of a battle.
I was supposed to leave that hospital and be done. And they're telling me that they have to put me on this thing called dialysis. They said I had an acute kidney injury.
What they explained to us is kidneys can be injured and they cannot work for some time. It could be 2 months where they're not doing anything, and all of a sudden they would say, wake up and start working.
And they're telling me, okay, that you're probably gonna be in outpatient dialysis for a month, but your kidneys will wake up. 1 month, I can do that. I can do 1 more month out of the hospital going to this dialysis clinic. Then it's gonna be over. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna be done soon. The dialysis clinic was attached to a nursing home. I'd walk into this room, it was this dark, really run down, very sad looking clinic with all of these chairs, these big kind of like recliner chairs, what a dialysis machine does. So they put a catheter kind of right into, they're supposed to put it like flat on your chest right here, but because I had so many wires and things happening because of my heart transplant, they ended up putting it right above my collarbone. It's a tube, it's a long tube, and it goes into my collarbone and it goes all the way down into my heart. And there's 2 little tubes that come out of it. And they hook you up to the machine, and one of the tubes pulls all the blood from your body, and it spins it through the machine and it cleans the blood, and the other tube is in charge of sending that blood back into your body. It's doing the work of your kidneys, pretty much. Your kidneys filter your blood and remove toxins, and then you can pee it out. My kidneys were pushing fluid through them, but they weren't filtering anything. So it's not that my kidneys were dead completely, because then they would have had to take them out. It's just that they weren't filtering. It really freaked me out. The whole thing freaked me out, because I'm 19, sitting in a dialysis clinic, and everybody around me is above the age of 70.
All of her friends were going back to school, and all of her new friends from SCAD were going back to SCAD. So the last place she wanted to be was home with mom and dad for a year. You know, she just thought she had moved on to a different stage of life of being in college, and now she was back home. And not only back home, but limited, and still going to dialysis every other day. We would have these different follow-ups with doctors, and the doctors would provide clarity again and reinforcement to Brooke, you're not going to be able to go to school. Not yet. She'd be very upset about it.
The first day we moved into our house, sophomore year, I walked in and I saw Brooke's room, and everyone else's room was set up, and Brooke's room had like a lamp on the floor. And I just remember that night, I was sitting in my bed and I just started crying. Then I realized, okay, she's probably not gonna come back at all this year. This wasn't how I imagined sophomore year going. I mean, she was my best friend freshman year. I couldn't imagine not having her.
We were all hopeful that over the first month or month and a half, her kidneys would wake up and begin to function again, and she could discontinue the dialysis. Week 1 goes by, no change. Week 2 goes by, it's actually gotten worse. As time went on, it became more of a possibility that her kidneys may not come back.
I go to appointment after appointment after appointment, and I'm asking them, okay, when are my kidneys waking up?
Another day, another dialysis treatment.
I could tell she was struggling of having to go to dialysis and do that and still kind of live that life and not the life that she wanted to live.
I'm struggling to understand how someone could call something a miracle and it feels like a nightmare. It does. It feels like this never-ending nightmare that I cannot wake up from.
No one wanted to explicitly tell the girl who just woke up from a transplant that her kidneys were failing. I would go home and just have to sleep for hours because I was drained physically and emotionally. They're saying, okay, we need to give it more time, they're gonna wake back up. And I wanna say in October. I knew that my kidneys were not waking back up. You just know your body. And dialysis was making me even sicker.
I used to take her to dialysis, so it was really rough. She would get very angry, and at times say she would refuse to go, and even if that meant that she wouldn't make it, which as a parent is just horrific, because you want to do anything you can to help your child, and when you can't, it's really hard. It's really hard. After sitting there for 4 hours on this machine, she would come home and just be throwing up most of the night. And she just didn't want to live like that anymore.
I just don't know how I'm expected to keep going.
We worked with the doctors and they agreed that Brooke could travel down to Savannah.
Brooke came to visit us in November, and she still had to be on dialysis. So she found a clinic in Savannah. She scheduled it for the earliest she could, so she had enough time to hang out with us the whole day.
When I was at that dialysis clinic, the nurses and the techs hooked me up, and something went wrong.
She starts her treatment, and about 15 minutes in, Brooke suffers a seizure.
I woke up in an ambulance, screaming, just not knowing what was happening. I didn't want to be in a hospital. I was in Savannah. I was visiting. You know, I wasn't supposed to be in a hospital bed. My doctors at home, once they found out I had a seizure, had to reevaluate my case. And they said, this girl's too weak. She is under 90 pounds at this point. She can't do this. So I remember I had an appointment with someone from palliative care, and she called me on Zoom. By the tone of her voice, I knew. I said, I need another transplant, don't I? And she just kind of sat in silence for a couple seconds. And she said, I know this is not what you want. And I said, no, it is what I want. How fast can I start testing living donors?
She called me on the phone and she said, I need to tell you something. And she just blurted it out, that she was in kidney failure and she was getting a kidney transplant. She could hear me crying on the phone and she said, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. And I couldn't figure out why she was almost happy.
I called my best friends, I'm like, guys, I need a kidney transplant. And they're like, Brooke, why are you happy? And I said, because this is an end. I was so eager to go back to school. I was so eager to get back to my life in Savannah that I was willing to do anything, even if that meant to get another transplant.
Being on dialysis, it really changed her whole life. It made her sick. She was throwing up all the time. It made her lose a lot of weight. She couldn't eat what she wanted to eat. She had to be on a renal diet. Like it really just altered the way she lived her life. For Brooke, seeing people, seeing her friends, seeing her family, that's what's most important to her. And being on dialysis kept her from doing that, because she had to be there 3 times a week. And so I think she saw getting a kidney transplant as an ultimate end to dialysis, and she'd get her life back.
It took me a while to process that it was actually another transplant and it wasn't just an end.
I'm scared. I put on this tough face, but I am scared out of my mind.
Now, kidney transplant, of course, is a little different than a heart transplant. A kidney transplant, you could have a deceased donor or you could have a living donor.
The easiest way to get one is from someone you know.
To post on Instagram and say, hey, I need a kidney. I need an O-positive kidney. If this is you, please sign up. It's hard enough for me to ask someone for a piece of gum. Cause I feel bad, someone takes out their pack of gum, I'm like, oh hey, can I have a piece of gum? And now people are all walking around with healthy kidneys and I'm like, can I have yours? Can I have yours? Like, it felt like that. Now someone has to go through so much pain to save me, and I'm not saving anybody else. I'm just taking things. I took a heart, I'm taking blood left and right, I'm taking people's time, and now I'm taking a kidney. I felt so guilty. And for all these people DMing me and they were like, hey, I want to give you my kidney. People I didn't even know. Hey, I found you on TikTok. I signed up to be a living donor for you. People from middle school that I haven't talked to in years. People from my kindergarten class were signing up to be donors.
Immediately, like strangers I didn't even know at Penn State would come up to me and say, I saw your sister's post and I'm gonna get tested. People I didn't even know.
It pushed me to want to fight because all these people are like, we're here, we're rallying behind you.
I think the one thing that's getting me through this is the day that I can say that I have a donor. The day that I get to jump around and dance and, just have my hope back. I keep praying, that's all I feel like I can do. Because I know that day will come. It's just a matter of when. I'll get there.
Brooke's mom, Debbie, was the same blood type, and Debbie immediately wanted to be the donor for Brooke if she was able to.
They give you a whole list of things you have to get done. I think they took 32 tubes of blood work to look at a bunch of stuff, and then I had to have a kidney function test. So there was just numerous tests that they ran on me.
I was in my room. My parents were in the kitchen, and my dad called up to me and he said, Brooke, can you come here? And I had heard them talking to the surgeon on the phone, and I knew that it was about whether or not she was able to donate. My mom and my dad were sitting at the kitchen table. My mom was already crying. And I looked at my dad and I just said, she's not a match, is she?
Deb had had mono before, and you carry that with you the rest of your life if you have it once. And Brooke had not. She did not carry that. So because of that, that disqualified Deb from being an eligible donor.
After a transplant, they suppress your immune system completely to the point where you have no immune system to fight off any other illness that's gonna come. So to give me mono, my recovery would be really, really tough. And I just couldn't stop crying. Screaming just like I should have died on June 15th. Why does God hate me? I felt like everything in the world was against me.
I just want to know when this hell is gonna end.
I went to a cardiologist appointment. And while I'm talking to my cardiologist, she asked me how the search for a kidney's going. And I told her what they said about the mono and why I can't have it because I haven't had mono in my system. And she like turns around to her computer and just starts like typing away. And she's like, look, your donor heart had mono. You have it and your body fought it. It just doesn't show up in your blood. That changed everything. I woke up on Christmas Eve morning and I went to dialysis. And after dialysis, I get back in the car and I'm driving with my mom. We were driving back home. I see someone's calling her. And my mom gets on the phone and she takes it off the speaker on the car and she holds it up to her ear just in case it was bad. I hear her kind of stop and she looks at me and tears are just down her face and she couldn't get the words out. And I was just like, you can donate. I never believed in Christmas miracles, but like that moment, nothing will ever top that.
Everyone was just crying and just so thankful, so blessed.
I got a call this morning.
Oh my God. That was, that was the best Christmas gift we could have asked for that year.
There was an end. There was an end in sight. On Christmas Eve, I thought, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to have a doctor's appointment right after New Year's. I'm going to get a transplant ASAP. I had no idea. I had no idea.
I thought that this was going to be my answer and my end, and I just feel more anxious than ever before. And I just want it to be over.
After New Year's, everyone was starting to go back to their college town, which also meant that my boyfriend at the time was going back to college. And I went over to his house a few days before he left, and it felt different. Obviously, it's been hard on both of us. When you're in a relationship and you're that sick, there's only so much that you can give.
You're 19, sitting in an ICU room, and he's looking at his girlfriend on life support. And we're both just sitting there crying because it's like, how did we get here? He had to sit there and look at his girlfriend and pray that she didn't die right there.
And I felt like it was too much for him to handle. We broke up that first week of January. That night I got home and I was in my room and I was thinking, I'm such a burden. I was too hard to love. I started thinking to myself, he fell in love with the girl pre-transplant, and that I have all these scars all over my body, and that no guy is ever going to look at me the way that he did. That no guy is going to look at my body and find it attractive. That no guy is going to want to sit with me in an ICU room again. And I felt like that relationship was something that I was holding on for. And losing that was tough. Everyone was off at college at this point. I had no one to talk to about it. He wasn't gonna be there this time. Who was? Three days before my transplant, I go into my dialysis room. Someone in my dialysis room had COVID. And I got tested, and they called me, and they said, Brooke, your transplant is canceled. You have COVID. So not only was I left to kind of process my breakup and my transplant, and then my transplant being canceled, I was then by myself, and then I was 10 times sicker.
Hi guys, I know that there has been a lot of concern as to what has been happening. We do have another date for surgery, and it's February 15th.
In reality, it was only a couple weeks that it was pushed back, but I knew for her how long that would feel.
If I were to move forward with surgery right now, we run the risk of me not surviving the surgery. And we don't want that.
How can you do this? I was right there for the taking. I'm about to go through this kidney transplant, and it vanishes. You know, for her, it was almost like saying you weren't going to do it.
It was absolutely heartbreaking to cancel that surgery. And I do have to face another few weeks with dialysis, and it's gonna be tough.
That room felt like a jail cell. It was like being trapped in my brain. I watched the sunrise and the sunset in that room. I got meals delivered outside my door. It felt like I was back in the hospital.
You know, this whole year being home and her friends all gone, and her kind of watching everybody live their lives through social media, it really hit her.
She wouldn't answer any of our phone calls. She wouldn't answer texts from me and Alex. I reached out to her friends. You know, one of her best friends went to Penn State with me. I remember I texted her immediately and said, have you heard from Brooke? She said no, she's not answering my calls. And I knew for her not to answer her friends' calls, she was really going through it. And then I got scared. I got scared that she would give up.
I was scared of my own brain. I was scared of how strong those thoughts can get. I was scared to wake up and do the same thing that I did the day before.
So, transplant is in 13 days. But I think I've also reached a point of depression that I did not know was reachable. And I can tell you right now that I am not okay. I am not okay, and I am very alone. And I'm very scared.
All of these lows had been coming in all the way back from day one when she got sick, to being on ECMO, to her kidneys not working, to going home and doing dialysis. And now, I think it was at this point again where she hit a new low.
No medical doctor on the team sat me down and asked me, how are you mentally? Because I felt myself turn numb, and then I felt myself turn angry. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be that person. But there was no way of pulling myself out of that because I had no help. I felt like I had nothing else to do but to be angry.
Today, I'm feeling very numb, and I don't know what to feel. Because there's so many emotions in my brain right now that I can't really just sort them.
And I would call one of my best friends, Chris, every single day. And God bless him, he would sit on the phone with me for hours. And he would constantly be texting me and checking in on me, giving me reasons to live every single day.
We've been friends for 4 years. It's more of an unserious friendship. Like we don't take a lot of things seriously. During that time, we talked about a lot of really deep things that I think really grew our friendship. And I'm happy that we did, but I wish it was under different circumstances. That was the first time that she really told me about losing hope. And that's when it became pretty real to me, I think, in terms of like she's going through a lot and I hope she's able to make it to her kidney transplant. That time was really hard. I tried to be available and I would sleep with my ringer on for a while there just in case, hoping that she would call me if things ever got really bad. I just wanted her to talk about it with somebody. And that was my biggest fear throughout the whole thing, was that she wouldn't.
One day I was in my room and Alex and Hannah came in and they just sat with me. I don't even think we said a word to each other. And it made me realize that sometimes that is so much more impactful than words. I needed to be there for my sisters. I needed to see them get married. I needed to see them graduate college. I needed to be there. That was one of the toughest days for me because in my head, I'm fighting this battle of I can't do this, and that you have to. And you're just gonna pass that pain on to somebody else. I had to stay for my sisters.
Today I woke up and my goal is to survive the day. And I'm gonna push my body as much as it can go.
She called my roommate and she was just like, hey, my transplant, it got pushed. She hinted towards the fact that she was really sick and things weren't looking good. And I just remember seeing her Instagram posts, seeing her showing off her wig because her hair was falling out. And I just could tell that wasn't Brooke, that was like a shell of Brooke.
Hello guys. I have been kind of weak recently, but I wanted to show you guys my early birthday gift, and that is my wig.
My hair was falling out faster than it was before.
Every day was heavy for her. Every day was heavy for us, trying to keep her spirits up. You know, each day just look forward to tomorrow. We're almost there. We're almost there.
We kept calling and kind of pushing them like, look, she doesn't have symptoms. We really need to get this done. She was just getting weak because she was just frail and having to go through this. And then she started throwing up and just getting more and more sick.
And if you're throwing up your anti-rejection pills, your body's just gonna start rejecting your other organ. And because nothing stayed down and then I was dwindling in my weight, I was hallucinating. I had to take my iPhone and video all around me and then watch the video on my phone to see if the things I was seeing were real and if they showed up on my phone camera. If I didn't get that kidney transplant, I wasn't going to make it.
To my future self, who's getting a transplant tomorrow. Hi, it's you from a little bit ago. All of those days that you spent crying, videoing yourself in this bathroom, they're gonna be behind you. I know you're exhausted, but you're there, girl. You're almost done, and I'm glad you held on.
I got to the hospital around 5:30 in the morning and I was taken to pre-op. In pre-op, I got gowned and got my IV in and they wheeled my mom back and then I was wheeled back right next to her and we were kind of in the same holding room.
She was across from me, so we were like feet to feet, and she was like waving and just being like her silly self. She was so excited to just move forward with this.
And I watched them put her under and get wheeled out. And then I was left in the room by myself, waiting to get wheeled back, knowing that my mom was under, getting her kidney removed to be put into me. It was scary. You know, I had to pray that everything worked out, because not only did everything have to work out on her end, had to work out on mine.
I just wanted to help her, and I mean, I would have given her my heart if they could have taken it. I just wanted it to be done so that she could get her life back.
I hope you're excited, because pretty soon you won't have to be attached to a machine. And pretty soon you won't have to shower by sticking your head in the tub, because you can't get your dialysis tube wet. You're right there. It's time. This is your end.
There's two different surgeons, one that will work with removing the kidney from Deb, and the second surgeon that will be handed the kidney and will do the surgery and the transplant with inserting the new kidney into Brooke. Eventually, the two lead surgeons come in and they begin to explain the very good news that both are doing exceptionally well. Everything went according to plan, and the best news you could hear was Brooke's kidney is already filtering and already working. And she, at this point, doesn't need dialysis.
I couldn't get up, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, you couldn't move. Like, you just felt like you were afraid to do anything, you know? And next thing I know, here comes Brooke, like, strolling in the room with her, like, IV pole. Like, she's got, like, tubes, and her hair is braided. She has her glasses. She comes rolling in. She's like, Mom. And I'm like, how are you even walking?
Brooke's rolling out. We see her coming down the hallway, and we're all excited and smiling to see her. She's like, did you guys bring my Starbucks order up? We're like, you just got out of a kidney transplant.
I felt my body working for the first time in 8 months.
It was just a miracle, really. It was.
Good morning, guys. I officially have 3 kidneys.
That was the first time I had seen her really feel like there was that energy back.
They wheeled me out to my car to go home, and I remember getting home and just being so excited that, like, it was done. Like, I was in my house and I was done. Getting my independence back after my kidney, with what I ate, with what I did, with where I went, really was such a 180 for me, because that's when things started to feel normal again, and that's when I started to get this idea in my head of, like, okay, this isn't forever.
I remember she was like, I just got a shower. It was the first shower that I could stand under there in, you know, probably almost, I guess, 8 months. So just seeing her do those little things, just to not have to be attached to those machines, that we could go away, we could go visit family and not have a time frame where she had to be back for that. It was just, God, I just think she appreciated it 10 times more.
So in the months leading up to when she was coming back to school and getting ready to go to school, I could just tell she was so happy, she was so excited. Gave her something to look forward to. And I think, you know, so many of those months that she spent in the hospital, at home, on dialysis, I think the thing that got her through it is that she would be back here. She would be back in Savannah, and she would be back with her friends.
Savannah wasn't just another city anymore. It wasn't just my college town. Savannah felt like a happy place for me. Pittsburgh didn't feel like home anymore. Pittsburgh felt like trauma.
We had just signed a lease on a new house. Brooke was healthy, her kidney transplant was a success. Everything was just looking up.
I remember the day I came back to Savannah so clearly. Traffic felt so slow. Like, I was counting down the hours to finally get there. I was so excited. Grant had already moved in. I was so excited to meet him and get adjusted. I was so excited to live in a house with my best friend and my soon-to-be other best friend.
So I met Brooke this past year when I was looking for a new apartment after moving out of student housing. and I found her on a Facebook group. Brooke and Mac had posted that they had an extra room, and so I sent Brooke a message on Facebook. I remember like a week later, I had met Mac, and she had shown me the apartment, and I loved it, and I was like, God, I hope they think I'm cool enough to like live with them. I hope they like me. And then I remember Brooke Snapchatted me and was like, hey, can you call? We hopped on FaceTime, and she was like, you know, we'd really love for you to live with us if you still want the room. So I'd finally found the place. We had both came down the same weekend to move in. I remember the first time she walked through the door, never clicked with someone faster.
The first night coming back and living in this house with Brooke and Grant, it was just so exciting. Like everything feels right again.
That was the night I felt like I got my life back. And hanging out with them and being with them made me feel normal. And it made me feel healthy and like I had control of my life. I remember just like being so scared to hug her. Almost like once I got her in my hands, like I didn't care anymore. It was like I just wanted to squeeze the living hell out of her. Like it was so good to feel like I had my Brooke back.
I think about how like a year ago at this point, she was going in for a kidney transplant, so sick, probably the sickest she's ever been. And I look at her now and I'm like, how? How was that only 1 year ago?
Oh my gosh, I was a nervous wreck. I'm like, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. And I was like calling her, making sure, you know, you're taking your medicine. Are you going to bed? Are you drinking enough water? Like, you know, really checking on her. She's like, Mom, I'm fine. You have to stop. And I'm like, Brooke, you have to understand like how hard this is for me, you know, to let you go after I've been with you nonstop all this time and caring for you and helping you through all this. I was like, you'll understand someday, Brooke. You will understand, you know, as a parent, how hard that was.
These are my pills. This is about 1/3 of it, I want to say. These are my anti-rejection meds. They suppress my immune system almost completely. So whenever they put the organ in, my body doesn't attack it because your immune system's taught to attack any foreign object that enters your body. This is folic acid. This is prednisone, sulfamethoxazole. So all these meds are super important and I have to take them every 12 hours on the dot to keep my levels super even, because if I don't take them, then it's like my heart and my kidney could go into rejection. The guys know me at CVS now. Like I can walk in and I don't have to type in anything. They have my card on file, they just hand me the bag and I leave. For months, I did not have an answer as to why my heart failed. What did I do? Is this my fault? They'd taken my original heart, chopped it up, looked at the whole thing, couldn't find a thing. I remember when they tested my genes. And I remember them calling me and telling me, hey, we have the results of your genetic mapping. You have this gene called PPA2. It's a genetic mutation, and it is extremely, extremely rare. We don't know much, but we know it's triggered by 2 things. 1, a virus, and 2, alcohol.
It affects almost the way the heart muscle works, functions, uses energy. And what they know is that there's certain environmental triggers in some cases that can cause heart failure with the gene.
For many, it's in that first month, 2 month of being born, and suddenly out of nowhere, the young baby suffers acute heart failure and dies. There's a small percentage that don't, and they make it into their teenage years, and usually a virus or something like that sets off the gene and causes a serious acute heart failure event. And that's where the rest of the people with the gene typically pass. There is a percentage, it's less than 1%, that actually make it through both of those different stages, and Brooke's part of that.
The first time Brooke had mentioned anything to me about her story was that same day. Like I was setting up stuff in my room and I offered her family and her a glass of wine, and they declined, and I was like, oh, they're just being polite. I didn't think much about it, but she said no because she can't have alcohol, and she told me that later that night.
I'm not gonna lie, when I say being a college kid and being sober, not out of choice, but just because you simply can't drink because you will die, is very frustrating. You know, and people tell me all the time, like, you don't need alcohol to have a good time. And I agree. I don't need alcohol to have a good time. I will gladly go out and dance and have fun and be social without it. But I feel like I'm missing out. And it's really, people can tell you it's not that deep, but they haven't been there.
I didn't want to make her feel that, like, there was any pity or that I looked at her any different. One thing about Brooke is she doesn't want to be looked at as something other than because of this thing that happened to her.
The gene that I have is recessive. The chances of both parents having that gene or carrying that gene is like below 0.01. There have only been 7 people who have survived this gene. 7. This gene has a 99.9% mortality rate. Why was I the one in 7 billion people? Why did I survive? There is not enough research to know what is going to happen to me or when it's going to happen. It attacked my heart, but the thing about it is that it can still attack the rest of my organs if it's flared up again. My gene, although it sucks, it makes me me. I feel like I'm a completely different person now. And there are days that I get glimpses of my old self and my old body and the Brooke without a scar. And it's tough. There are so many times where I feel desensitized to this story because of how many times that I tell it. I still have like major PTSD from it that'll hit me out of nowhere. I feel like everything could break at any moment, just like it did on June 15th.
Throughout, she's always stayed my best friend, her and Hannah both. And we had to lean on each other a lot through all of this. And I would say we're probably even closer now. Naturally, I worry a lot more about her. It's nice to be able to see her enjoying her life again, back to how it was before all of this, in her favorite city, with her favorite people.
I'm always gonna be a little worried about her. She's my little sister.
As far as Brooke's health now, I'm always on watch.
I want to make sure she's okay.
Okay, hold on, Sven. I'm gonna need like a piece of sugar or something. I can feel when my blood pressure drops. And I just need to eat something so I don't pass out. What happens is I can't, it starts to get black and the blood doesn't go to my head. So if I put my feet above my head, the blood goes back to it.
With that story, with that history, you kind of have to be on arms all the time. I know she takes care of herself, and should something happen, we got her.
I see her now, and I see how happy she is, and all of her friends that support her and take care of her and love her. She's got a good life here. So.
My life is fragile. My heart could fail again. Matter of fact, it probably will fail again. Transplant recipients don't live as long as non-transplant recipients. Just depends on the timeline of my organs. My transplanted organs, that is, were on their clock, not the rest of my body, unfortunately.
But if I lived my life thinking, oh my gosh, my heart could fail tomorrow, I wouldn't be living at all. There's no point in living in fear. My donor, he is a 27-year-old male. That's all I know. People always told me that, you know, Brooke, you're a walking miracle. You're answered prayers. I said, no, I'm not. My donor is. And organ donation is so powerful. It feels like an honor to carry someone's heart. Like, I hope that I can take his heart and him on adventures that he never got to go on.
She sees a new light in life after all of this, and I think has shown the rest of us this new way and new perspective to look at life.
You know, just living life after transplant, I have realized I don't need a glamorous life. I have a lot more just faith that things are going to work out how they're supposed to.
Today's world especially, we get so caught up in the little things and the materialistic things. And what matters is the people in your life and the impact that you make on other people's life.
And it makes me excited for the future. And I know that I'm capable of doing something big and going bigger.
There was always a part of me that knew that she was going to do something with this story.
She's gonna help a lot of people and impact a lot of people, and she already has.
Seeing the amount of cards and support and love that Brooke got just shows the amount of people's lives that she has touched and continues to touch. And I think we all lose sight of that sometimes. So I think this whole story really just shows you life and what it really is about.
Whenever I had my heart transplant, I knew that I wanted to get a tattoo to commemorate it. One day, I was playing cards with my grandma, and I drew a Queen of Hearts. It really represents, like, winning, you know, and not just, like, the struggle of it. Like, when I think of it, I want to think of how I overcame it and not so much, like, the bad part of it.
Before I knew Brooke, I had always valued every moment and every day. I'm aware that tomorrow's never promised. But after meeting Brooke, it's like, literally, you never know. And she is walking proof of that every day.
Life is fragile and things can happen out of nowhere. I don't think anyone saw this coming. And it just makes you realize that it's really important to tell the people in your life that you love them, because you never know the last time you're gonna see them.
It's made me have a new appreciation for the people in my life and the way that I spend my life, because it really is a lot shorter than we think. I couldn't be more proud of the way that she's gone through this journey and the way that she's handled it and come out on the other side of it.
A happy life is possible after trauma. That no matter what level of rock bottom you are at, if you are in rock bottom's basement's cellar, you can still climb out of it.
I always tell her, if you can get through what you got through, there's nothing you can't do, Brooke. You were tough and strong before, but this just gives you a whole new outlook on life and us too. There's a purpose for Brooke on this earth, and it's gonna be great. She's gonna live it out to her best ability. I know she will.